Hey guys, what's going on? GM Magnum here.
GM Throwback
from Dice Bag and GM. Today we're going to talk about something that is near and dear to Throwback's heart.
Barbarians.
Yeah, those things. And just kind of give you guys a bit of, what's the word I'm looking for?
Background, preview.
Insight.
We,
here at Dice Bag and GM, when you guys see us rolling D&D, we're doing 3.5. The primary reason for this is because we can't afford 5th edition. We've seen a lot of videos about 5th edition and some of the tweaks and some of the things that have changed, and Nerd Anarchist had a really good video on 5th edition first impressions. But as we go through a lot of our races and classes and player profiles, things of that nature, we are referencing the 3.5 edition. So today we're going to be talking about Barbarians. Similar to our Scions video, we do have a resident expert on Barbarians. So I'm going to let Throwmac take it away.
all right.
Enjoy
Well,
my coffee.
What does the term barbarian mean? Somebody who lives outside of civilized society. Does that mean you're just some sort of crazy, berserk, raging jerk that just smashes everything?
Yes.
Not necessarily. Not necessarily. There's a lot of ways you can go with it. You can be just like a tribal leader. Yes, you're still going to have your rage ability, which is great. You can see that as more as a battle lust. You can play that out almost however you like. So, get my morning coffee in. All right. There's a lot of different ways you can go about it. You can play it almost like a Native American, because technically they are barbarians, but civilized within their own society. But since it was outside of the rest of the guys that came over, the Europeans that eventually became what we are now today. So there's many different ways you can go about it. There's also yeah. There's also a lot of different ways you can go about playing the mindset. Like me personally, when I play Barbarian, I don't like to play them super stupid. I mean, you could if you like to, power game and have like a dump stat of intelligence. I mean, that could be normal, but to me, a Barbarian would have maybe an average or a bit above average wisdom, because they may not be the wisest. No, that's actually the incorrect term. They may not be the smartest, but they do learn from their mistakes, and they're able to make judgments based on things they've done in the past. But on top of that, Barbarians are going to typically have a higher strength and constitution than most other people, because you can't really wear heavy armor or medium armor because it's going to slow you down. You're going to negate your fast movement, which is a perk to being in the class. That extra 10 feet of movement is great. So that takes your double move from 40 feet to 80 feet, which is great. You can close the distance pretty quick on that, and that's a walk.
And that's the whole point of the Barbarian, is that they are your first strikes, so to speak.
Meat shield.
No, that's more your Dwarven heavy fighter.
No, that's a legit shield.
But yeah, a legit shield.
The Barbarian's armor is his health.
But the thing about playing a Barbarian is that if you look at a Dwarven heavy equipped fighter, most of them only have a movement speed of 20.
They only have 20 movement speed anyway.
Right, unless they have taken some sort of feat or have some magical enhancement that gives them a better movement. You're looking at a 20 movement feat, half the Barbarians. The Barbarian's job is to basically get in and start messing things up while everyone else gets in position. It's that jump. They get.
He's the alpha strike. He's the first shot.
Exactly. He is what you want to lead off with in most cases of combat.
If you have a Barbarian in the party.
Right. We normally run more of a threat-based game. So whoever's doing the most damage at that point in time is who the bad guy is going to be focused on. So if the Barbarian runs in and starts swinging on everything, everyone's going to be focused on the Barbarian while everyone else gets where they need to be.
Your rogues, your scouts, anybody who's going to get an extra damage bonus. Ninjas, they can do it too. But there's a lot, like I said, there's a lot of different ways you can do it. One of my favorite ways to play a Barbarian is, Barbarians don't really, for me, mind you, My barbarians don't typically care about traps. The rogue's taking too long to figure out the trap, and you're probably playing chaotic neutral. You play anything that's not lawful. Otherwise, you lose your ability to rage and become an ex-barbarian, and then that's if you're playing rules as written. You can rule over rules anytime you want. I mean, whatever makes the game fun for you and your party.
And speaking of making the game fun, barbarians have a lot of different outlets they can go. A lot of people think, ooh, barbarian, you're going to be this big old fat orc who's, you know, super dumb and likes to pick his nose and flick his boogers at people. Not the case. Well, sometimes the case. You know, you can have a gnome barbarian. Those guys are hilarious. You can, though it's not as common, dwarven barbarians do exist. Human barbarians exist. It's
Conan, great example.
Right, Conan. You know, it's the
Krull
ability.
the Conqueror.
It's the ability to throw yourself into that rage and start just having a blast hitting stuff. Then, and as Thromac was saying, when you watch your stats, it opens up a lot of different things for the barbarians to prestige through.
There's so many different ways a barbarian can prestige. There's bear warriors; those are pretty cool. So you can rage, and on top of that, you can wild shape. You can turn into a bear, and then eventually, you know, brown bear, black bear. You become a dire bear eventually, and you can stack your rage on that.
Can you be a koala bear?
That's not a bear.
But it says bear.
It says bear, but it's a marsupial.
It's a koala bear.
So a panda bear.
I saw a koala on sale on Craigslist the other day.
That couldn't have been legal.
Yeah, you don't need a special permit.
Oh.
But we digress. And then there's my personal favorite, the Rage Mage.
Oh, I love rage mages. All right. There's a lot of different ways you can go with that. You know, you're going to have to take some sort of caster class. You know, sorcerer kind of makes sense because it's just natural, it happens. But I have a side character I have ready to go. Should we ever run a level 14 game, you know, like a little smash and grab or something, that is a barbarian war mage. Now that's a whole different little thing there. Rage mage. The cool thing about war mages is there's no alignment restrictions. You know, a chaotic neutral war mage is actually pretty
common.
Well, not necessarily common because war mage is more,
beast.
but it's beast.
You know, with a Rage Mage, being able to
Cast spells while raging. You have a spell rage.
And the fact that, you know, first off, one of the prerequisites to go Rage Mage is that you need to be able to rage, which is why that fits into the Barbarian video, because Barbarians like to rage. But to be able to up your spells so drastically through a spell rage is pretty sick. But there are a lot of different ways you can play a Barbarian, and a lot of people, or a lot of gamers from my experience, they look at the Barbarian as nothing but, oh, it's another fighter.
Big dumb fighter.
It's another fighter. It's another thing to put in front of all the sharp pointy sticks. It's not the case. They can be very cunning. They can be very deceitful. They can do a lot of damage, yes. But the primary use for our Barbarians is that run in and distract. You're there to distract people while everyone else gets set up. Now, as a DM, or a GM, if you have a Barbarian or a Barbarian type class in your party, and it's being played in this manner, now granted there's a multitude of ways you can play any character, this is just our viewpoint on this. But when I have a Barbarian in my party and they're being played as the first striker, as the, oh, I'm going to run in and hit it, you know, I'm going to throw my sword at his head, it opens up a lot of doors for you in your NPC setup, your baddies. You can have more at any given time. 9 times out of 10 you can add 2 to 5 more bad guys when you have a Barbarian in the group, because they can take them. They can sit there and they can pull that threat from the rest of the party. The rest of the party, yes, they're going to be doing more damage, but the Barbarian's always going to be, hey, look at me, look at me, look at me.
Great distraction. It's a howling, screaming, hack and slash warrior.
Right.
Or, you know, whatever you want to put with it. You know, whatever weapon you choose. I mean, typically a Barbarian is imagined as having a giant two-handed weapon with, like a giant axe, bearded axe, a maul of some sort. Somebody's carrying, he's got big muscles, somebody to run around and just hit stuff. Not always the case. There's whirlwind barbarians that use 2 swords, and they're just literally a tornado of destruction.
You don't have to be this big, huge, lurking, umbering Hulk to be a barbarian. I personally...
Bug monster?
Yeah, right. I personally love to see barbarians cross-classing with other things. It can be very tricky. I knew a guy once who played a cross-class rogue barbarian.
That's absurd.
It was awesome.
A rogue that rages?
Yeah. He would sneak to where he had to be, he would rage, he would sneak attack, and just own face. And, once he rages, it's all over. Then he just gets in with his daggers and his swords and he just starts going crazy. But that first hit on that sneak attack with rage
is huge.
Nuts. Absolutely absurd. And not only the cross class, but also when you start looking at, again, your prestige classes, I'm going to kick myself for mentioning this, but the Frenzied Berserker.
The Super Barbarian.
Quite possibly the most broken thing in 3.5 D&D.
Besides psionics. Well, original psionics before they updated it.
Before the Advanced Psionics Handbook, psions were the most broken thing. But a Frenzied Berserker cannot die.
Well, depending on the situation. If they take massive damage and you're playing rules as written, where if they take massive damage, you have to make a fortitude save, which they're probably going to make anyway because their fortitude is through the roof. But
stupid.
Once they reach 4th level of Frenzied Berserker, they get this thing called Deathless Frenzy, which is they can continue to fight beyond 0 hit points. They can keep fighting. Now, you can still drop at the end of combat, but during combat, they're still a devastating force.
But the caveat to that is they can't end their own rage.
They can with it. They can,
but they gotta save it.
They have to reach a will save of 20.
And the will save sucks.
No, it's actually really good. They get a bonus. They get a morale bonus when raging and frenzying.
Oh, well, never mind then. I forgot about that part.
Yep.
But
that's why I'm here.
Yeah, right. You know more about this crap than I do. But what always seemed broken to me was if you're adding that RP element. For me, the RP element of a Frenzied Berserker is I'm gonna chop everything's head off. And then
everything that's a threat.
Oh look, you're a party member holding a weapon. You're a threat.
After all the perceived threats,
right?
Which are your enemies. If you are still in a frenzy, which does stack with a rage, so it does get very scary.
Yeah.
With that, not to mention you're fast, so monks can outrun you eventually, and so can scouts. They can outrun you eventually. I believe rangers. I have to check into it.
A wizard with fly.
Wizard with fly. Until he starts throwing things.
Right.
But that's improvised weapons, throw anything, feeds, stuff like that.
But having a berserker in the party really does open up a lot of different avenues for not only the party but for the GM. I like to set a lot of traps when I know I have a barbarian, because most barbarians they
eschew traps. They don't care.
Right. Or they do a Dwarven trap finder.
If we play.
Or a squishy trap finder where the rogue is sitting there like, okay, there's a trap here, let me disable it. They just grab the closest thing and throw it through the trap, or they themselves will run through the trap.
Or throw their ally through the trap if they're frenzying.
Right, or throw an ally through the trap, or just kick the rogue over through it, and, alright, I don't have time for this, let's go smash something.
Or, they also have a huge hit point pool because they have a D12 for a hit die. So do Frenzy Berserkers. It's still a D12 hit die.
All about that D12.
Alright. On top of that, though, and when they get to their max level, I believe it's 10, they can inspire. Eventually, they can inspire frenzy in their allies. And level 10, it's inspire. I think it's inspire greater frenzy, which is like a plus 10. Which all willing allies that want to enter a frenzy, if they enter a frenzy and inspire that frenzy, they can make everybody in the party frenzy. Now that can put some problems out there.
That's broken. That is straight up broken.
I mean, I'll pull up the file for you. It is BS, the stuff they can do. But
it really is. But anyway, I mean,
that's why most game masters, dungeon masters, typically don't want people to go frenzy berserker, because it does, it does put that danger, element in there.
But it can be a lot of fun.
It can be so much fun.
Now, especially if you're running a campaign that has a lot of bad guys and is one of these high lethality campaigns, where your players pretty much know that somebody's going to die or half of them are going to die, having a berserker can really just tip the scales either way. In
their favor or against them. If they can draw a lot of threat, rages and frenzies are your con score, your con modifier, which is like an average is like +2 to +3, +4 or 5 in really rare cases. But when you activate your rage and frenzy, that modifier goes up with a temporary modifier. So it's your con. It's 5 turns plus your con mod that includes the new one. And those frenzies can last a long time. There's feats that extend it.
Yeah.
Extended rage, which applies both rages and frenzies. It's
extra rage.
Extra rage. You can rage 2 more times per day,
which is
not in the same encounter.
Now, and there are some forms of rage which, in my opinion, are kind of crap. And this isn't so much on the berserker side, but on the rage side. For example, Thromac, when he gets hit, he goes into a rage,
which is how frenzy works.
Right. That's
if they haven't raged or if they haven't frenzied yet that day. That's they take a point of damage. Style. They start with a frenzy. It just happens.
And I mean, as far as I'm concerned, if you have that particular mechanic, find a way to trip it, just to make it fun.
It happens all the time.
Yeah, I mean, Thromac wears a shock collar. He gets shocked. That's a point of damage. Time to go into a rage, and then he just kind of stands there breathing heavily for several rounds.
Like a pervert, like
pretty much. I want to hit you. So yeah, I mean, there's ways as a GM that you can pop that frenzy or pop that rage so that they can't use it later, maybe, just to make it interesting. Now, I'm not saying do this so that you can kill them easier. I'm saying do it to make it fun. With Thromac, I know that if I make him use his rage early on in the day, he's going to find a workaround. He's going to think harder. He's going to work harder. And he's going to make it interesting.
Thromac, the player.
Right, the player, not the actual character. Because the actual character doesn't even realize he goes into a rage.
He just thinks that's how it works.
Yeah.
It's just battle lust to him.
So, definitely try and find some form of balance, some form of variance with using your barbarians. There's a lot of rules out there for alternates, for just different ways of doing things. It's a good time. You gotta...
Fans running.
You got to find some way to make it fun, because using a barbarian as a standard fighter isn't really the best utilization. And that's what we see a lot, is that people want to come in with a barbarian, or they're afraid to play a barbarian because they don't want to play the dumb character.
They don't have to be dumb by any means.
Don't have to. I know...
Now, 3.5, they start off as illiterate, and you can
right.
You can spend skill points. I believe it's 2 skill points to become literate. Not that it really matters, because the moment you cross-class into something else, you automatically become literate.
Right. It's just the fact that barbarians are seen as being outside of civilization, and if you're outside of civilization, you don't really have the facilities to learn how to read.
Well, the best way to put it is outside of modern civilization.
Modern D&D civilization.
Which
isn't modern.
Cities,
right.
The typical stuff, places that have schools and bank systems, and barbarians might, use a barter system. Like we had a player that was playing a halfling barbarian in my campaign, and that was a lot of fun because, he ruled it as he grew up outside of normal society, and he had to learn to fend for himself as a young child.
And I mean, I definitely challenge you guys who are looking at playing barbarians, who enjoy playing barbarians.
You don't have to power game it by playing an orc or something like that, which I prefer to play at orcs, because in my campaigns, there's a playoff of an older character of mine, which was my actual first melee character I ever played in D&D. I used to play sorcerers and wizards and clerics and stuff, spellcasters. People typically stand in the back of the ranks, well, except for clerics. They can wear heavy plate and actually get up in the fight if they so choose. But in my campaigns, I had my first melee character, which was a half-orc barbarian, and I called him Crunch because I thought it was funny. So I did and eventually beat him, and that was...
And now orcs are accepted in society, and orcs are... No, orcs
they're
are
like
part of society.
They're more like... In my campaigns, they're almost militant. They're like Spartans.
Right. They've actually put together a civilization, and
they have training camps.
But something else that could be fun to do, and that you mentioned training camps, you know, maybe you have a city or a town or something of that nature that trains berserkers to be used in a military fashion. And perhaps your berserker character came from this type of setup. You can do a lot with backstory to where you're not playing the dumb berserker, where you're more like playing the berserker who comes from a city setting and who knows the rules and whatnot of civilization, but when it comes right down to it, you can fly into a rage and really mess something up. Mm-hmm. Always an option.
It's a battle lust, you know. Yeah. You know, the old Celtic warriors, Vikings, you know, they relished combat. They truly believed that you know, if I appease my gods and I die valorously in combat, I'm going to go to Valhalla. And they would fight fiercely, ferociously. Mm-hmm. Same thing with the Celts. They would run into battle like naked, screaming, howling, flailing weapons around, just beating all sorts of wholesale ass. You know, killing it. And that's the whole thing is, it wasn't all about flourishes or fighting, you know, for the sake of fighting and things like that. It was you know having like, you know, an epic duel. It was kill as fast as you can.
Right.
You know, no, don't sit there and parry. Oh, look how good I am. No. They go for the kill.
Bash the head in, move on to the next hit. You know, that is kind of the purpose of a barbarian.
War trophies too.
But you can still play it intelligently. You can play a smart barbarian, so don't be afraid of them. You know, step up, have fun with them, and be creative. You don't have to be relegated to your standard orc barbarian from the mountains who only knows killing.
Not by any means.
Make it interesting. Make a halfling. Make a gnome. Make a dwarf who's been outcast from his dwarven society. You know,
and had to live on his own.
Right. Once you get up to your higher levels, your players don't necessarily still have to go through and play, you know, the dungeon crawl. You know, put them in charge of battalions of armies. Make them centurions. Now, put them in charge. If you have a berserker, develop the storyline to where he opens up a berserker training camp, and then now all of a sudden he's in charge of a legion of berserkers,
which is terrifying.
It's horrible, especially considering the fact one good sorcerer could take them all out.
Also true.
Yeah, or one good scion, but you know, it's still a lot of fun. There's still a lot of aspects. So, you got anything else to add?
RP, like when it comes to a barbarian, you know, you don't have to sit there and like, you know, food. No, you don't have to do that at all. Barbarians, they come from societies that are just different. You know, they could be great storytellers. You know, and the rest of everybody else sitting around a fire. You know, just chilling out. The barbarian could be sitting there, and, you know, telling stories about past conquests, telling stories about, you know, spirits and things like that. You know, the gods they might worship or the nature spirits that they believe in. Yeah. And they'll sit and, you know, tell these great stories around a campfire. I mean, you can see this in most fantasy movies. Mm-hmm. One of the ones that, you know, this is going to piss some people off. One of the movies that I'm going to use as an example is Your Highness. Yeah, it's a freaking comedy movie. James Franco and that
movie's so stupid.
His name just slipped my mind.
God, I hate that movie. It's
because he's from where we're from. Freaking
No, it wasn't Seth Rogen.
Not Seth Rogen.
But yeah, anyway, it's a dumb movie, and if you ever had the opportunity to watch it, don't.
No, I say watch it. If you like, you know, dumb comedies and stuff, still watch it. But there's a pretty good example of a storytelling barbarian. I mean, granted, he gets his ass kicked, but by a trap. Go figure.
Yeah.
But, you know, he's big, muscle-bound dude with a sword. He's like, stand back. I will lead. And gets annihilated by a trap. But, you know, it's a good example. You know, he's sitting around, you know, drinking mead, eating, you know, giant turkey leg drumsticks and stuff, and telling stories to people in a tavern or around a campfire. Barbarians have so many options of ways they can go about, just really bringing flavor to a group. They don't like.
Don't be the meat wad. You are not a meat puppet. You are not a meat wad.
Meat wad.
Meat wad. You are
That's terrible.
You are still an integral part to the party, to the story that is being told on the tabletop. You are not just there to run in and hit stuff. Make it fun, make it interesting.
You can, like I said, barbarians can have pretty good wisdom. Like,
then what I think of when I see a barbarian is Army of Darkness. Ash was a barbarian. I don't care what anybody says. Ash was a barbarian with his boomstick and his chainsaw arm. And
what about all the chemistry?
He was a beast.
What about the chemistry stuff and, making gunpowder and then engineering a giant freaking... taking his car and making giant saw blades out of it.
Exactly. He was an intelligent barbarian. He loved to fight. He loved the bloodlust. He got, he was a smart mouth. And he was awesome. So when I think of a barbarian, I want someone to play Ash. And just make it so much fun. Shoot first, ask questions later.
Not a carbon copy of Ash,
right?
Or whatever, but it's a point of inspiration.
Absolutely.
Don't, like railroading, no.
No, don't railroad it. But definitely, use that as inspiration. Use your highness as inspiration. Use Conan the Barbarian.
Crawl.
There are a lot of great examples of really good barbarians. So don't just be the meat puppet. I think we covered it.
Yeah, that's pretty good. We're not going to sit here and tell you exactly how to play your character because that's just absurd. That's missing the whole point of getting together at a table and telling a story with the players and the DM. It's your character. At the end of the day, you're going to do what makes you happy.
And if being the meat puppet makes you happy, then fine, be the meat puppet. But just know that you will get so much more out of it if you're actually contributing more than just a sword
or an axe or whatever.
Yeah, whatever.
Your choice.
Dwarven Urgosh, whatever.
Dwarven War Axe is a 1d10 one-handed weapon.
Yeah, it's pretty beast. I don't have anything else. And we're getting up to the half-hour point here. Yeah. Get this guy started on Barbarians, he'll go all day.
I love Barbarians.
So guys, just some input from us. By no means do you have to take it, and use exactly everything we told you. Please comment. Feel free to,
put it all down there in that comment section. Let us know what you think. How do you like to play Barbarians?
How do you play the Barbarian? We love video responses. Ideas are good. Let's keep them rolling. Let's keep them percolating, and really build up the RPG community. Until then, this is GM Magnum,
GM Throwback,
and keep them dice rolling.